She's a
The Combat Cast, Episode 16, featuring Kai, Don't Blink Karafan.
And we are live. Hello and welcome to The Combat Cast, Episode number 16. Today I am joined with a man who really does not need any introduction, the one, the only, Mr. Kai, Don't Blink Karafan. My man, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. Always a pleasure to see you.
Yeah, right back at you, bro. So to get things started, Kai, I want to ask you, how did your journey in combat sports and martial arts begin? You've probably been asked this like a million times.
It's always nice to go back memory lane.
Yeah.
So yeah, my martial arts journey started when I was, I think, 10 years old. Went down to the local jiu-jitsu gym, which was Strikeforce in Avondale at the time. It was right next to the cinema there. My friend told me to come down with his dad and him as well. Did the kids classes on a Sunday. I think at the time Carl Weber was teaching the classes.
Yeah.
Shout
out to Carl Weber.
Yeah, Carl Weber, New Zealand pioneer.
Yeah.
You know, this guy's a legend in the sport. But yeah, started the sport. Started going on a Sunday. Got more into it, and yeah, I enjoyed it. But then I stopped for a little while. I don't know why, but I stopped. And then when I started high school, when I was third form, I used to get bullied just for my size. And then my parents wanted to install more confidence in me, so they put me back into martial arts. So I went back to Strikeforce, and then at that time Embodies was teaching. So then yeah, that's why I got back into martial arts when I was about 14. Yeah. 13, 14. And then yeah, kind of just put it all together. So I was training jiu-jitsu as well as kickboxing, and then training in MMA. So I had my first fight when I was about 15. First MMA fight when I was 15, I lost. But for me, it wasn't about the winning or losing. It was about the journey just to get into the ring, you know, the process of the personal growth that I had just to get in there, and then showing my friends and family all the hard work I've been doing in the gym. And then that's what hooked me to the sport. I was like, I want to chase this for the rest of my life. That feeling of the unknown, of I've never been into fights before, but the best way to find out what you're kind of made of is getting in the ring and testing yourself and finding out what kind of character you have. So that's what hooked me. And
what did you kind of learn about yourself from that first fight?
I just learned that there's so much. Everyone has it in them, you know. Everyone has that fighting spirit, that warrior spirit. It just needs to be brought out of you. And that's what a good coach will do. They'll bring it out of you. You know, everyone works differently and motivated differently. And for me, I just kind of needed that just to build on. Okay, I'm not made out of glass. You know, I can get stuck in there and fight. You know, I just had to prove it to myself. So that's what I loved about it. And then the confidence that comes with it, and then the friends that you make in the sport, you know. So these are lifelong friends that you know, I met you through the gym, and you just have that connection straight away. So I loved that about the sport, and those attributes as a young man. Martial arts has taught me, you know, so many things that I, you know, still to this day use in everyday life. You know, being respectful, being accountable, you know, being true to yourself, being on time. All those little things when I was coming up have stuck with me now, and I feel like it's real important even to this day. You know, young men especially, they lose aspects of life where martial arts has kind of kept me grounded in that way, where you can kind of always go back to how you're brought up and the traits that were passed down on me, but by, you know, great men around me. So it's a cool lifestyle to take, and you know, this translates into everything you do. Martial arts is not just a sport for me; it's a lifestyle, and to be able to do this now as a full-time job, you know, it's crazy to look back on, you know, when I used to get bullied and being so vulnerable, and now do this as a living, and, you know, put New Zealand on the map, and you know, put food on the table. So I'm definitely privileged and honoured to be in the situation that I'm in, but I don't take it lightly. You know, that's why I train so hard, and when I signed for a fight, I put everything into it, because I know so many people would want to be in my shoes, but so many people want to take away what I have as well. So I would never let that happen, and that's what kind of motivates me to kind of always be better and push to be the best.
Cool, man. Great answer. I think one thing that you really nailed there was kind of like how you embody that lifestyle of an MMA fighter, or just the martial art kind of like way, you know? And that's something that I think a lot of people haven't always done, but you have. Like, I remember when I first met you, you were very like focused, you know, you'd always be at the gym on time, you'd always be training. It was like, you know, like I'd see you out at like a party or something, and you'd be like sober, and you'd be like, oh, I've got to go to training tomorrow, so I don't want to get too wasted or something, you know, or I'm just going to stay sober, you know, but you're always like very focused towards that goal, you know. So I think that's that's something that's quite unique about you, and I think that's something that a lot of people can probably take away from you as well.
No, definitely. Like I remember in high school, you know, I've always wanted to be in the UFC. That was always my ultimate goal. And every year I would have
Pause 1 second, sorry bro. Where did you first learn about the UFC? I was curious.
I first learned about it when it was in that middle stage between starting jiu-jitsu and then going back to the gym. Like I started to watch it a little bit, and then I started to rewatch, you know, Carl Weber's fights when he was fighting on K1 with no gloves. You know, this was like bare knuckle days where it was pretty like underground fighting. Yeah, the MMA was more like, I guess, looked down upon. It wasn't a real sport back then. It was more just like, you know, real brutal, and like if you did it, you're a bit weird, or like you had issues, you know. No one really saw it as a mainstream sport.
Right.
So now, you know, full circle, it's one of the most popular sports in the world. But back then when I started, it was still growing, you know. It was still so new to the world. And when I told people that I'm training, you know, MMA, and they're like, what's that? And I said, oh, it's in a cage. And like, oh, cage fighting. They just had a stigma around it, and they just look down on you. But now, you know, it's right next to the NBA.
It's kind of gone around full circle, hasn't it? You know?
If you're in the UFC, it's like, okay,
prestigious.
Everyone knows what the UFC is now, and you don't kind of have to explain. And if you don't know what the UFC is, it's like, well, you don't obviously have the internet or have a TV, you know. Like it's so
mainstream, eh?
Exactly, and it's broken down so many barriers now where you don't have to explain what you're doing or why you're doing it. It's just, there's so much about it now, and the entertainment factor, and just to be in the UFC, you know, it takes so long. People just see the tip of the iceberg, which is, you know, the last 2 years of me being in the UFC, but I've been, you know, training and fighting for the last 10 years. So people don't see the hard work that goes behind it, but it's all worth it once you break through to the UFC and you make a name for yourself. But what I was saying just before there, when I was starting the sport, the goal was to get in the UFC. But I remember every year I had to write on my notebook. So I had a notebook back then, and I was big into lists, you know, weekly lists, monthly, yearly, just goals that I wanted to tick off. And for 10 years I had to make the UFC, and every year that I didn't make it, I'd have to put on the next list that for the next year. Wasn't until 2018 where I could finally tick that off, when I made my UFC debut, where that I could finally live up to that New Year's resolution. So that's just something I've always been into. You know, I've always been focused on what I've wanted. You know, I was always passionate about, if I was passionate about something, I wouldn't stop. I was quite stubborn in that regards, where I just would be real one-track minded. And, you know, if you'd see me out, I wasn't, like, obviously try to have a good time and stuff, but I had something at the back of my mind, you know, something at I was always looking at the bigger picture. I was always thinking, okay, how can I get better? I know drinking's not going to help me, so I'm going to still enjoy myself, but I want to make sure that I'm not...
Because you obviously need to have a break from training sometimes
too,
exactly,
right? Yeah. But in my back of my mind, like, I wasn't going to be satisfied until like I made my goal, which was to get in the UFC. And then once you made the UFC, you know, you got bigger goals, which is to get the title. So it just never ends, and that's what I love about the sport. It's so challenging, and it's so demanding, you know, emotionally, physically, spiritually, where you're getting pushed to your limits, and I love that about it. And that's what I meant from the start, where my first fight, I could see that that's what I loved about it. And I played a lot of team sports growing up, you know, soccer, I did, you know, a lot of sports where you can hide behind a team and you're kind of just a number. And I realized I wasn't top tier. I was just like, I was good at soccer, but I wasn't the best. So after, halfway in high school, I kind of realized that. So I was like, I want to put everything into fighting. That's what I want to do. So after high school, I stopped soccer and just went all into fighting, which isn't the best way to do it. You know, I was at uni. I was at uni, but my head was in the gym. You know, my head wasn't in the book. So it's something that it's life lessons you learn. I was at Auckland Uni studying a bachelor in bachelor in arts. Too much workload for me. I didn't want to do it. So then I changed to a bachelor in sport at Unitec. Something more relatable to what I wanted to do was fitness. And then even then I wasn't committed to it. Nah. So then I saw they did tryouts on in Thailand at Tiger Muay Thai, and they were looking to start the MMA fight team over there. So it was back in 2012.
Yeah, I remember it clearly.
Yeah. So then I saw they were doing invitations, so I sent
that was like the first one, right? Or one of the first ones? Yeah, I was the first one, yeah. You were the first one, right? Yeah, that's right.
So there's no blueprint of how to do the tryouts, what they wanted. I just sent my fight CV, which was just like my record at the time, a bit about myself, and then ended up getting an invitation. So I think 30 of us got invited from around the world, over like 500 applicants, and they were only choosing 5 for the fight team. So I went over a month early. I told my parents, all before this, I told my parents, you know, I'm dropping
Wait, so you went over a month before the actual tryout started to train at Tiger Muay Thai?
Yep.
That's so smart, bro.
So I knew that I wanted to acclimatize.
That's dedicated right there already.
But the thing is, like, before all of this happened, I told my parents, I'm dropping out of uni. You know, I can always go back to it. And
how did they find that?
Like, I was a bit emotional. Like, I cried because, like, I didn't go to my exams, and like I just wasn't committed to it, you know. And they knew that whatever I wanted to do, as long as I was passionate about it, they would support me. So when I told them that I want to go chase my dream, which is to fight in the UFC, and this is just the stepping stone to get me closer towards that. So when I said I'm moving over to Thailand and I'm just going to chase it, go all in, they were a bit apprehensive to give me the full support, because my whole family's academic. You know, my brother's a lawyer, my dad's a lawyer, my other brother's a sports journalist.
So you're kind of the black sheep person.
Kind of, yeah. And I didn't want to, like, having a lot of pressure like that on you, I didn't want to let my family down.
Yeah.
But in saying that, I wanted to do something on my own and
get out of your own pathway.
Exactly, and get out of my comfort zone of you know, living at home. I wanted to just live. You know, I wanted to get life experience, which no textbook can teach you that. So at a young age, I decided, you know, I'm moving to Thailand and I want to chase it. So I went all in. I wouldn't recommend it if you're a uni student dropping out and you know, chasing a sport. But at the time, that was all I saw, and that's all I wanted to do. So
how do you think your kind of like your experiences coming up here in New Zealand, like training, doing combat sports here in Aotearoa, prepared you for the training that you did in Thailand, and, you know, kind of transitioning over into that part of your life? Like, how do you think that kind of like prepared you for it?
Well, at Strikeforce, we had the best fighters in New Zealand. You know, I think every weight class for MMA, we had titles for it. So I knew that
was like the golden era for MMA of Strikeforce.
Definitely,
and New Zealand.
Exactly, yeah. We had everyone. You know, a lot of guys that have gone on.
I'm getting shivers down my spine thinking back about those days.
Yeah, like in that gym back then, you know, so many killers were on those mats.
And Sam and
Rod,
and
Sam,
Dan.
Rod, Dan Hooker, Rod McSwain, you know, Mark Abelardo, big UFC, UFC fighter. You know, Gareth.
Yeah.
You know, Sam Striker Brown, one of New Zealand's best heavyweights.
Keota.
Yeah, Keota was our coach back then, our MMA coach. And it was funny because, you know, Dan and Rod were still, you know, young in their careers, but they were teaching the classes for MMA. So they were pretty much my coaches for MMA. Like, whatever they said, I would just listen and do. And it's crazy to look back now and thinking, you know, we didn't really know what we were doing. YouTube was teaching us things, as well as, you know, watching UFC and stuff, but we're just kind of picking up stuff on the fly. But it prepared me well for what was to come in Thailand. Really immersing myself in the lifestyle where, you know, you'll just eat, sleep, train, repeat. That was all I was doing. And I went a month before the tryouts happened to get used to the heat and get acclimatized. And then over 2 days, that's when the tryouts were. So we had to do a Muay Thai session, a Jiu-Jitsu session, a wrestling one, a conditioning, an interview, and then our last one was the Big Buddha run. So in Phuket, Thailand, that's where Tiger Muay Thai is. There's a famous hill in Phuket. It's called Big Buddha. So that's where a massive statue of Buddha is, and it's like a 5-kilometer run, which is pretty much steep. You know, it's as steep as you can run up a hill. So I ended up coming second in that run.
Damn.
And the guy that won it, he'd run it a few times. First time I've ever done it.
Okay.
So he kind of knew how to navigate it up and like
Right.
when to push and when to pull back. But then I ended up getting a scholarship on the team. So I was unanimous decision, youngest in the room by like 10 years. Everyone else, you know, had families, had a career already. I was just, you know, a few fights deep.
Yeah.
But they knew that.
That probably put you in a good position though, right?
Yeah, and they knew that, you know, me being here so young, they knew that like this is what I wanted, and I just had the right attitude. I was just, you know, open book, just ready to learn, ready to be a sponge, like soak up as much experience as I could. And obviously I was quite shy growing up, so to be overseas on my own, not with my parents or the comforts of home, and just kind of
what was the kind of like once you got into that
Yeah.
and you were kind of like a sponsored fighter, what was like the lifestyle like for you there? You know, like living at Tiger Muay Thai and everything, and in Phuket, like how was that lifestyle
it was awesome, like
from a day-to-day basis?
So the people that I were hanging out with were all on the same path as me, you know, just wanted to better themselves and chase that martial arts dream. So the day-to-day basis, my routine was to wake up, go for a 5K run, and then I'll start the Muay Thai class either 9 or start the Jiu-Jitsu class at 10. I'll train with the Thais, or I'd be doing Jiu-Jitsu with a Brazilian coach at the time, Fernando. And then this was too much. I'd learned not to do this, but I would overtrain. So I'd do Muay Thai or Jiu-Jitsu, and then I'll do conditioning at 10 or 11, combat conditioning.
Do you think that was a common thing for people to do at that point
yeah.
in time in the kind of like the stage or evolution of UFC
Definitely was.
and MMA?
Yeah, definitely was. You know, you couldn't train that much in the day and be better for it. It was actually hurting me rather than helping me. But at the time, it was just like more was better. But and now it's less is more. You know,
Yeah.
so I would train Jiu-Jitsu or Muay Thai in the morning before after doing my run, and then I'll do conditioning, and then in the afternoon we would have MMA sparring or wrestling, which I'd do that at about 3 or 4, and then about 7 I'd do a yoga class. And I would do this, you know, every day for
Wow.
6 days a week.
Yoga as well.
Pretty much, bro. So like I would treat training like a job, 9 to 5 job, but it would be from like 7 days a week. And
so would you have Sundays off?
usually I'll just go for a run or something light
Right.
on a Sunday.
Yeah.
But yeah, your weekends would fill up, and you'll just be trying to recover for that Monday.
Yeah.
And I did that, you know, for 4 years, where I was fighting around Asia, taking boxing or Muay Thai fights when I wasn't fighting MMA, and it was cool because I had so much experience. You know, by the time.
Yeah. How did you find that kind of like, you know, from being kind of like primarily an MMA fighter, then all of a sudden you have to do boxing, and then you have to do Muay Thai and things like that?
It was all just a learning curve. So
Yeah.
I knew the best way to get better for MMA was to put myself in situations that I've never been in before, which is to jump into, you know, just those one discipline, so boxing or Muay Thai or competing in Jiu-Jitsu or wrestling comps.
Yeah.
I knew there was a bigger picture here, which is to get me better for MMA.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to get more mat time. So the best way to do that is just to compete and test yourself. So I did that. You know, at one point I fought, I think 9 times in 9 months.
Oh wow.
A different country every month. And at the same time, you wouldn't know this, in Thailand we had to do visa runs. So I only had like 3-month visas at the time.
Those things suck.
So I had to leave the country, injured or not, I had to leave, and I had to take this fight because I didn't want to, at the time I wasn't making much money, and I wanted to kind of kill 2 birds, 1 stone, leave the country.
So you had a visa run, had a fight, and then come back kind of thing?
Exactly, yeah. I would use the fight as my visa run.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
That's
I'll come
it,
back
right?
to the country.
Yeah,
So
you got to time a day.
Yeah, so I was,
can you make it 2 days later?
Exactly. So
That's when my visa expires.
it's pretty buzzy to think about it now, you know. Like it was me managing myself. Like I didn't really have a coach, like a proper coach back then. Well, at Tiger at the time, we had the team was kind of looking after itself.
Yeah. Psychologically, how did you kind of find that compared to like now, where you actually do have a coach? Like, you know, what's the kind of like paradigm in terms of like your mindset towards it all?
So I'll get into this. So at one point in Thailand, when I was living there for 4 years, I think it was the 3rd year I was there, I was getting a bit too comfortable.
Yeah.
And a bit too complacent. Where
with the lifestyle.
Yeah, the lifestyle where I was I was so used to doing the same kind of things, and I wasn't getting pushed out of my comfort zones.
Got it.
And I wasn't having a head coach there telling me what to do. And I was coming off 3 losses in a row, which in MMA, that's quite rough. And
in any fight sport.
Yeah, it's detrimental to your career, you know, like.
And mentally too, it's quite damaging.
It was draining, yeah. So my parents are telling me, or not my parents, but my family's telling me, you know, maybe come back home and
reset.
go back to uni. Maybe this isn't for you. And at this point, I was like, you know, I got myself into this position that I'm in. I wouldn't feel right going home without something, you know. I had to come home with at least giving it everything, and you know, giving it one last crack. So I told myself, you know, okay, I want to commit just to fighting. Commit just to training. Don't take any more fights, and just get better, upskill, get fit, and I'll see if when I'm ready I'll take a fight. So just trained for 4 months. In the back of my mind, I had all this pressure from my family telling me to come home, and I'd tapped them out like financially. You know, I couldn't ask them for money anymore. Living overseas, you know, they were looking at it like, oh, he's just on holiday now, where I was, you know, pretty much fighting to survive, like putting food on the table just to make it to the next week. So then, I fought. 4 months later, I made my flyweight debut. So I actually dropped down from bantamweight to flyweight, and made my debut in Taiwan.
And that was kind of a pivotal moment in your career, right?
Yeah.
When you made that transition.
Yeah, it was. So then I fought in Taiwan, ended up getting a 9-second knockout.
Wow.
You know, one of the my quickest knockout on my record. Pretty much the first punch knocked him out. Pretty much, bro. And then
Ip man.
Like that just gave me so much confidence going forward. And I took a fight 2 weeks later on a cruise ship that came from Malaysia to Phuket, and the fights were in Phuket, Thailand. 2 weeks later, after that 9-second knockout, I got a 12-second knockout on the boat, and then that kind of steamrolled. So after that, I got a 30-second knockout in Guam.
What was it that kind of like switched in your head, do you think it was? Was it all these things kind of combining together, really like setting that fire like really solid inside you?
Definitely. My sports psychologist talks about this. It's when preparation and execution align with each other.
Synergize.
And then that's when, you know, great things happen. And that is what happened for me. So I just had all the pieces were there. I just had to put them together, and dropping down the weight class where it was more suited for me for my height. I'm quite small for bantamweight. A lot of, you know, big guys are cutting down to that weight class, so that gave me an advantage dropping down a weight. And then also just the confidence that gave me, you know, knowing that all the guys that I was fighting and I was losing to, they were the best in the region at that time. So I knew if I'm in the same kind of caliber of those in the ring of those guys, and I'm just losing by decisions or close margins, I know I should be here, you know. And then when I dropped down a weight class, that just gave me momentum. So I ended up getting 5 wins, all by first round knockout.
Wow.
And then that's when I got picked up for the Ultimate Fighter.
Right.
And then I was on season 24, which was coached by Henry Cejudo and Joseph Benavides.
That's right. Yeah.
So I was on Henry Cejudo's team, and I ended up getting the only knockout of that whole season, which was my first fight, which was against Terrence Mitchell. I got a 30-second knockout, which went viral.
Yeah, that did go viral. I remember that, man.
That was crazy, you know, from going from a 3-fight.
And that guy was quite tall too, like long, rangy.
Like 5'11",
yeah.
So
I remember at the weigh-in, he was like putting his arms out, and you kind of just took a step back, and you're like,
exactly.
Your reach doesn't mean anything if I'm standing back here.
Yeah. Like at that point, I'd been living in Thailand for so long, and I'd been in this fight lifestyle that, like,
you've seen so many bodies.
Whatever this guy was going to bring to the table, we're going to be fighting tomorrow. Like, I don't really care. You know? So that was my mindset. I was like, bro, like, just.
That was like a Mark Hunt moment, just with the hands behind the back, like.
I was like, just keep the same energy tomorrow, and then I ended up knocking him out first round. And Dana White was on his feet, you know, saying, because a lot of, at the time, flyweights were getting a lot of heat saying, you know, they don't finish fights, they're not exciting. Yeah, exactly. And this was the first fight on that season, so that made a statement. So like, here we are, we're here to put on a show, and it definitely put a target on my back, because no one really knew who I was. Americans are quite naive like that, where they don't
look outside of that.
No, exactly. Outside of America, if you're not from America, they don't really know who you are. But when I had that knockout, people they had to take notice of me.
They had to know who you were.
But I didn't get picked up for the UFC after that. I went to Risen, which is in Japan. I fought on their New Year's Eve show.
How did you find fighting on Risen?
It was a massive bucket list for me. You know, I grew up watching Pride, and it was a massive staple for martial arts back in the early 2000s. You know, this was up there with the UFC back then. So to fight on pretty much Pride, but just with a new name, Risen.
Yep.
It was a massive milestone for me, and like walking out and that you come out of the tunnel and this massive tube comes up and then you walk down the ring, and I think the stadium had about 30,000 people there. Same card as my
cool.
like Crow Cop, you know, grew up watching him, and so many massive names on that card. It didn't go my way. I had a tough fight. I lost to a really good Japanese fighter, and I lost by decision. And then after there, I needed to make some adjustments. So that camp I did out of Thailand.
Yep.
And then after that fight, I had to say, you know, am I actually getting better? And I
Do you feel like you've reached a plateau there?
exactly in Thailand, where I needed a head coach. I couldn't just train myself and use our team to kind of train each other. So that's when I was speaking to Eugene. I'd done a few trainings with him before, because he would go with Izzy to China, and then they'll stop in Thailand. So we had a good relationship, and I knew that's where I needed to be. So after that fight in Japan, I didn't go back to Thailand. I went back to New Zealand, and I started training at City Kickboxing. So this was back in 2016 when I made that call.
Yep.
And best decision I ever made.
How was it though? Like initially, kind of like having lived in Thailand for, or was that would be like almost 4 years, 3 or 4 years, right?
4 years I was living there.
And then coming back to New Zealand, like what was it like, kind of like transitioning back over again?
It was kind of hard. Like I had all this momentum from the Ultimate Fighter, and then taking a loss, you know, that really hurt my not my confidence, but just my career at the time, because you know everyone was expecting me to be the next, you know, flyweight contender, especially getting that knockout in the show. So I told Eugene, what do we have to do to get me back in the UFC? And he just said, turn up to training and the rest will take care of itself. So you know,
that's so cool.
Wise words from, you know, from you.
It's so simple, but it's so powerful at the same time.
Exactly.
Right?
He said, you know, all your problems outside the gym, they disappear when you're training. You know, like training is like therapy, and he's always taught us that, you know, like just keep turning up, and the ones that are going to get better and the ones that are going to eventually, you know, take it to the next level are the ones that are just constantly training. You know, with our sport, it's not an off season, on season. It's a yearly thing. You know, and it's a young man's sport, so we have a short window of how long we can do this for. So when you choose this lifestyle, you have to make that commitment, and that's why it's always been in me. Like back when I first started, like I wasn't just a 9-to-5 martial artist. You know, even on the weekends, you know, I'd always be thinking about, okay, what's my next week's goal? What do I want to work on to improve myself? And having a head coach now that would keep me, you know, on my case, and he'll tell me, you know, where are you? You said you're going to turn up, or a minute late or not, you know, you're still late, and I'd still be punished for that. So that kind of, I needed that discipline in my life, and that definitely got me on the path to where I needed to be. So I ended up being on a 5-fight win streak in 2 years. I was fighting around Asia.
Since you moved back to New Zealand?
Yeah, back to New Zealand. So we fought in Melbourne. I fought on this show called Hex. I fought this guy called Rodolfo. Took the fight on a week's notice. Fought it at a higher weight. I fought at 63 kg. So I weighed in without having to cut weight. Oh wow. The guy that I fought cut from like 73 or something in the week of. So big boy, black belt in jiu-jitsu.
Oh, I think I remember this one.
Yeah, and then I was losing. I wasn't losing the fight, but it was close first and second round. Yeah. And then the third round, I had to kind of turn it up. So we knew he would get tired because we took the fight on a week's notice, and we knew we were fit. So I ended up knocking him out cold in the third round.
Was it an overhand right?
Yeah.
That was a good one, man.
Yeah, bro. So that put him out to sleep.
I was like, stroke force! The classic.
Yeah, bro. Just dropped the chin and played
back
the
to
right
the roots,
hand.
Just shut up. Hey.
The little bomber.
Yeah.
Bomber special.
Yeah.
So no, it was awesome.
If in doubt, hey, shut your eyes, overhand right now.
But we could see him. He was a southpaw.
Yeah.
It was something that we worked on. We knew he would be dipping.
Right.
And instead of headhunting in the first and second round because I was missing, they're like, aim for the. Eugene told me, aim for the chest. That's where we're going to hit him. Right. So I just kind of kept aiming for the chest, and eventually we found the button, and that put him out. And then after that, I just kind of, because we were close to making the UFC after 2 or 3 more fights after that. Yeah. The UFC came back to Auckland, and we were campaigning to get on that card. Yeah. Just bad timing, and we didn't have enough time, but we got a lot of momentum campaigning for it. Yeah. And it didn't happen. And then in 2018, I was on a 5-fight win streak.
So that started building that kind of like that demand for you. Yeah. For your stocks,
so
basically.
People knew that, like, oh yeah, this flyweight finishes fights. Yeah. he's got a lot of knockouts on his record.
Yeah.
Comes from a good gym. Like I think at that time, Dan and Izzy were in the UFC by then, and they were saying, this is the next guy to be signed. So I was on a 5-fight win streak again, and 2018. I had so many like last minute call-ups from the UFC saying, "Oh, can he make weight in a week?" And it's like, bro, like,
come on,
give me a
bit
chance,
more respect than that. Yeah.
Or just give me like at least a few weeks, not just like, can he make weight? He has to go to Canada or America tomorrow. It's like, well, we can't take the fight. Like, I want to make my UFC debut on the right foot. I don't want to do it where I'm going to be depleted. Yeah, exactly, and not with a full camp. So Eugene just said, like, if this is the case, we're just going to have to stay light, stay fit. And when the call-up happens, we'll be ready. So I think after a fight that Izzy had, he talked to Dana. He said, you need to get my boy in the UFC. And then I came into the gym after they got back from their wins. Dan and Izzy both fought in America. And then Eugene set up a TV in the middle of the mats to say thank you for helping with the camps and stuff. So sat down thinking nothing of it. All the boys are there watching. And then Dana White pops on the TV and he said, Hey, this is Dana White here. Hey Kai, just want to say welcome to the UFC. Congratulations, bro. And it kind of didn't hit me because I'd been given the call up so many times and then been taken away from me.
Right.
So when I would like listen to like Dana White saying my name and then saying I'm in the UFC, it didn't like register. And then it wasn't until I got up and then I hugged Eugene and Eugene's like, bro, you're in the UFC now. Like all that work's paid off.
Like you're officially there.
Because it taken so long, 10 years journey, like being on the cusp, being on the Ultimate Fighter, we get a taste of it, but it wasn't the real thing. And then 2 years later, finally getting a call up.
So that's such a like a huge and like powerful moment for you, right?
It was, yeah. So like I couldn't hold back the tears. It was such an emotional time just because I worked so hard for it.
Yeah.
And then when Eugene hugged me and said, now you're in the UFC, like I had like a little moment with me and him and to myself, like just saying like, fuck, look, we're finally here. But then I knew like, okay, now it's time to actually work.
Yeah.
So I made my debut in Adelaide that year, December 3rd. I made my UFC debut on the same card as Mark Hunt's last fight. I think Tai Tuivasa fought on that card in Tyson Pedro. Ended up winning by decision and getting fired the night. So I got a 50k bonus on my UFC debut. So pretty much dream start to my UFC career.
Yeah, on a pretty cool card too, right?
Exactly, so many big names, so many people I've looked up to. But in saying that, like I was more than ready for those moments. Like in my career, I've had so many ups and downs, so many highs and lows, leaps and bounds, smiles and frowns, but it's just a part of the journey that you're on. I've learned that in my martial arts career where you might take a loss, but it doesn't define you. It's what you do after that loss is what's gonna which is gonna make you. So
which is gonna define who you are.
Exactly. So when I made my UFC debut,
that's one for all the up and comers out there.
Exactly.
If you take a loss, don't just let that define you.
And that's in everything as well. That translates into life. If something doesn't go your way or your personal life doesn't work out, don't let that deter from the bigger picture of what you want to be or where you want to be in life. Stay true to why you started and slowly tick it off. If you do it day by day, they'll turn into weeks, which will turn into months, and could be what I had to do for 10 years. I was working towards one goal, which was to be in the UFC, but eventually it's all going to work out. And
mentally, how did things kind of like shift for you though? Like once you got that kind of like, because for such a long time you would have just been kind of like fixated on getting into the UFC, and then like in that one moment when Eugene told you like you're there now, like how did kind of like your mind shift to then start a new goal and to like go on to the next journey?
Well, being in the UFC wasn't just enough for me. I wanted to be there for a long time. My goal is to be the UFC Flyweight champion. That never changes.
Right.
But I know how the fight game works now. Like it's not always about it's just about timing. Everything's about timing, and it's got to work out the right way. So for me, I just had to stay in the gym and just always upskilling, always getting better, and then balancing it out with personal life. Not always just living in the gym. That's something that I've had to learn as well. Not being so one-track minded. It's healthy to be able to have different things outside of fighting as well. So you're not just immersed in that one thing. And so that was a big moment for me making my UFC debut. But then straight away, I had a new goal: crack the top 10. after the top 10, win the UFC world title. So now we're currently ranked number 7. I'm 4-2 in the UFC, coming off a loss at the moment against Brandon Royval. My last fight was on Fight Island about 10 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I didn't get the win, but it could have gone either way. I just got caught. We ended up getting fight the night.
That was a crazy fight.
It was real back and forth, and it's one of those things where like he hit me with a spinning elbow, and
out of nowhere, when he was rocked too.
Exactly,
right?
9 times out of 10 that elbow would have missed.
Yeah.
And the one time it landed. So that's just how the fight game goes. Like you could be on the verge of winning, and then that happens. So that doesn't stop me. My stocks still go up regardless of the outcome of that fight. People know that I put on entertaining fights, and that's something that I always wanted to be. Stepping into that ring, I wanted people to remember not just me winning, but me being this guy's going to throw down. Like he's going to really lay it on the line for
the fans.
Exactly, for the fans and for New Zealand. I want to make people remember where I've come from, and they're like, oh, New Zealand, they breed like the best fighters in the world, which is true. City kickboxing right now is one of the best, if not the best place to train in the world. Got best gym in the ranked best gym in the world for 2019. Eugene Behrman got ranked the head coach of the year as well. And we've got 2 world titles, 4 of us in the top 10. So the records speak for itself. So now you
guys have really like elevated the game for sure here in New Zealand,
Yeah.
And it's that team kind of like synergy that you've created as well.
It's an environment.
It's set like a real platform and like a blueprint for other gyms here in New Zealand to follow, to show them that it can be done.
Exactly. We've always had the talent and we've always had the skills. We just had to put it all together.
Yeah.
So the thing that Eugene always told us, that stuff that we learned in Thailand, we still have it in our toolbox. We just had to bring it back over to New Zealand. All that knowledge we learned, we just brought it back overseas, back from overseas to New Zealand, and now, the next generation can be homegrown, can do this from your own backyard. We didn't have that opportunity when we started, just because that's what you had to do back then. You had to go overseas to get better. Yeah. But now you can do it homegrown, and we have so much talent at our gym now that you can see like it's all there. They just got to, be patient. Yeah. That's something that I've always found difficult, being patient of like the fight game and stuff. But in the long run, you got to think about where you want to be in 10 years' time. You don't want to be just in and out, and then come off a few losses and kind of slowly fade out. Yeah, that happens to a few fighters. Guys at Strikeforce back in the day, like you were like, fuck, these guys are going to be the next big names.
Big names, yeah.
It doesn't always work out like that, and that's just how it goes. But at our gym now, there's 7 UFC fighters, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. We've got so many more young guys that are coming through and just knocking on the UFC door. So it's awesome to see that level and that homegrown talent coming through.
That's amazing, man. Yeah. So when you look back over kind of like your career, bro, and you look back over all the fights and stuff that you've had, are there any like specific fights that you kind of look back on and you're like, man, that was like one of my best fights? Like, what would that be for you? Like a real kind of like pivotal highlight of a fight?
Probably one of my first fights. So I took this fight on a day's notice. It was down in Palmerston North on the show called Hexecution. Yeah. I think the Fight Shop put it on. Yeah. So we had a guy pull out, and then Rod called me up. He said, hey bro, do you want to take a fight? It's in a day's, like tomorrow. We need to get on a flight today. And I was like, wow, sweet, I'll take it. And he's like, the guy's 10 kgs heavier. And I was like, yeah, easy. So I was walking around like 63 back then. Wow. So I was pretty light. And the guy that weighed in, he was cutting down to 70. 10 years older than me, completely outmatched. This guy had the experience, the weight, and the age, on me. So everyone's like, why are you sitting this? They're telling our coaches and stuff like, this is a complete mismatch. Why are you throwing your boys into the wolves? Like he's completely out of his depth here. But that was the Strikeforce way back then. It was either sink or swim. You learn, or you win or you learn. That's how we saw it. So took the fight. It was a hard fight, back and forth. My nose was busted, bleeding, but I was still in it. It's first round I definitely lost. Second round I was coming back, but third round I broke him because he's like, what, this young kid still in the fight? He's not backing down. Ended up dropping him. I remember being on top of him and ground and pounding him, and my nose was so blocked from all the blood that I had to like blow it out, and I blew it out on top of him. So I blew it out and all his blood went everywhere, and I still keep punching him, and ended up winning by decision. Wow. So when I jumped up on the cage, like everyone was just in shock because it was such a big upset, Yeah. He was a hometown guy, and that was kind of like, oh yeah, this guy has what it takes to be in the sport, And this was only my third or second professional fight.
Right.
And I had so much adversity in that fight, so many things that went against me, but I found a way to win. So that was a massive point, and it was early on in my career where I learned that, I can do this and I can tough it out.
Mentally, an experience like that, Kai, it really does kind of give you this kind of like solidarity in your own being as a fighter, knowing that you can kind of like handle anything that the world can throw at you, really, eh?
Exactly, like you just said, so many obstacles to overcome, but you just got to let it go. Doesn't matter, once that cage shuts, doesn't matter what your record is, who you are, who you train with, it's just me and you.
Yeah.
And that's how, that's where character comes from, and that's where you know what you're kind of made of, when you just got to get in there and get stuck in and just give it a go, take risks.
Awesome.
With big risks come big rewards, so that's what I did. And yeah, that was a massive moment in my career, early on in my career. But then one of the bigger moments in my career was definitely that Rodolfo fight.
Right.
Coming off that loss in Risen where I didn't win, I had a taste of the UFC, and just training at City Kickboxing, and then being under Eugene, just listening to the corner, not kind of going on my own way, because that didn't work out. So I just had to kind of drop the ego, whatever happened in my past, just let it go, and just be an open book and just listen. So, and then look what happened. Got a third round knockout. Yeah, exactly. So that was a massive moment. So many big moments in my career.
Yeah, it's hard to like pin it down to one or two, right?
And then the last one I would have to say was when I fought earlier this year, UFC Auckland. So my dream since the start of the sport was to fight hometown in Auckland at Spark Arena. At that time it was called Victor Arena.
Yeah.
So I grew up driving past it, going down Mission Bay, down to Tamaki Drive. Always pictured my walkout, what would it be? So when I had that fight booked, I'd had 10 years of visualizing what my walkout would be, how I would vision myself fighting there.
Yeah.
So when it all happened, like fight week, going to Oraki Marae, where we got a welcomed on, and we really got to embody what we're really doing here. It's not just me fighting, it's like my whole ancestry, my whole 2.0 was behind me. Years of them fighting over land, we're doing the modern day version of that, and doing it in the ring. So I just knew that week we weren't losing, just there wasn't a chance in hell we were going to let these guys come over to our shores and take this away from us. So
God, that's
that really
sent shivers down my spine.
that really
fueled
us to what was to come. And then fight night, having 10,000 people at Spark Arena at 10 o'clock in the morning, nowhere in the world you'd get that. I fought in Vegas on the biggest fight cards. No one comes to the main card. So for a prelim fight, I was I think second or third fight on the prelims, and the stadium was packed. And I came out to Poirier once my music dropped and came in, everyone stood up and they said, oh shit, now it's a party, like it's one of our boys fighting. And it couldn't have gone any better, and I was just in there just soaking it all in. Like, even for me, I was like, just felt real surreal, just like, okay, I'm finally here now. But I had to also be present, like I don't want to take away from the moment, but I also need to still be focused on what I have to do.
Yeah, on your job, right?
So I was just fueling it in. I remember Eugene in my ear saying, don't let the energy of that stadium take away from your performance. Harness it, use it, and use it as fuel. Your opponent's going to be feeling the pressure, but we're going to use that. And then that's what gave me more confidence. And then he was just saying, this is just another day for you. All these rings that you fought in, it's just like no other. Even with the UFC banner on it, all the bright lights, all the people around you, once you step in the ring, it's just another day. Like, we do this all the time. So I didn't want to put more pressure that needed to be.
That perspective is very powerful,
exactly,
isn't it?
Yeah. So once we got in the ring, me and him were stepping across from each other, and I could feel the energy in the crowd. There was no way I was losing. So I ended up winning by decision, and massive moment in my career, because I dreamt about this for so long, fighting at Spark Arena, fighting in the UFC.
Fighting in New Zealand.
Exactly, in New Zealand. And once I got my hand raised, and you could just feel all the love and support everyone had. We went 3 from 3 that night as well. So just like a dream outcome for us, putting New Zealand on the map, but just obviously giving back to our people as well as, showing that, this is my All Black jersey. Growing up, there wasn't a blueprint of how to get to UFC. There was only one how to get to the All Blacks. There was no academy. There was no high performance sport to get into MMA. We were doing this as on the fly. And now to see UFC on such a mainstream platform where kids now are like, I want to be in the UFC like, you know, Israel, like Dan, like Kai. That's everything for us because we didn't have that growing up.
Yeah.
So now
you had to pave the way yourself, right?
Exactly. Yeah. You know, we had pioneers in the sport like Mark Hunt, you know, David Tour, so many combat athletes, but no one that was homegrown. So the first one to do it was Dan. You know, he was the first UFC fighter to get signed that was New Zealand based, and then that kind of let the floodgates open with all the rest of us. And now there's 7 of us. You know, Alex is our Australian adopted brother, but he's definitely one of the boys from City Kickboxing. And yeah, it's awesome to see, you know, so many boys that have gone down the same path as us and doing so well.
So how do you feel the sport of MMA and like, you know, UFC and stuff, how do you feel like it's evolved from when you first kind of like began your journey starting fighting and stuff? Like, how do you think it's evolved now? Like, what kind of like differences are there? Like, and what have you experienced over your time as a professional athlete?
Just exposure, you know, so many fights that were so legendary and iconic just never got the attention that it deserved. And now you can get a highlight reel in, like, you know, local shows, and that could leapfrog you into, you know, your next biggest fight, which could be, you know, a feeder for the UFC, or there's just so many more eyes on you. Where back then it was hard to get that attention. And now the UFC, you know, they're looking everywhere. They're looking all the time for new talent, and they know New Zealand has a massive pool of athletes that they can choose from. So for young guys that are coming up in this game, like, the potential to get signed it could happen on your next fight. You know, you just don't know. So that's why you've always got to put your best foot forward, and you've always got to be training, and you never know when a short notice call up could happen, because this time of uncertainty this year, 2020, you know, so many people have been signed because, you know, no one else can take the fight. And if you're fit, you're ready to go, and you put on a good performance, that could change your life. So now a lot of kickboxers I've seen have converted to MMA because they've seen the success that, you know, MMA fighters are getting now.
Like Brad, right?
Yep, Brad.
One of your stable mates.
You know, Brad, he came from a kickboxing background. Israel came from a kickboxing background, but they knew the end goal was to get to where the biggest platform would be, which is the UFC. And now there's so many more kickboxers, like Carlos Olberg just got signed to the UFC, and he's come from kickboxing and boxing. So it's awesome to see that the system that we have at City Kickboxing, obviously a striking background, but
that's so cool though.
To be able to strike,
for me as like a striking fan,
exactly, yeah,
it's awesome.
To be able to strike, you've got to know how to defend takedowns, because you've got to keep the fight standing. So I say this a lot, we train jiu-jitsu and the wrestling just as much as we strike, if not more, because we need to know, we need those techniques to be on point, because everyone's going to be looked to take us down. They know that, you know, we're here to keep the fight standing, but even if you know that's going to happen, it's hard for it to stop. You know, if we want it to keep the fight from going up from the ground to the stand-up, or vice versa, to the stand-up to the ground, we're able to do that. And we've just kind of stayed ahead of the curve. So a lot of people didn't know about us back in the day, and now they've taken full notice. You know, what are they doing down there? Now they're like studying our footage, studying what we're doing.
Your training camps.
We're not really doing anything different than what other camps are doing. We're just all year round, you know, we're constantly upgrading, constantly upskilling, and it's the team environment Eugene and Doug have created at City Kickboxing that we thrive in. It's that championship mindset where iron sharpens iron, and everyone stays accountable. It's everyone that in the team will be like, bro, where were you? You said you were going to be here. Like, we saw you going out the weekend, and you don't want to be that odd one out. Like, that's just how it is at our gym. You don't want to be that guy. Yeah, exactly. You don't want to be the guy like letting the team down. And it's not really letting the team down, it's just kind of letting yourself down. And
but then the whole team
and it's just monitored by everyone else. You get FOMO when like all the boys are training and you're not, or
just going back to something that you mentioned there, Kai, you kind of touched on and talked about, which has been a real big kind of like component of CKB's success, is their ability to kind of like defend takedowns. And I think for me, as someone that's been kind of like following the sport, I've noticed that that's kind of like a trend that's kind of growing, and now it's like you get two like really good grapplers, and it just becomes a striking match like the whole time. There isn't any grappling. Like Khabib, it neutralizes it, and then all of a sudden it's like, who's the best striker? Because both of them can stop each other from taking down and getting to those positions, so it becomes a striking match. So it's kind of like gone full circle, right? Because before it was all about like, you got to know how to do jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is the way forward. It's the best art. Blah blah blah. You got two guys that are even in that skill set, and it kind of like neutralizes it, like you said, and then all of a sudden it's a striking match.
Isn't
it interesting?
It's a chess match of fighting, bro. Like,
Yeah.
it's an evolution, and it's always evolving. So back then it was jiu-jitsu. So the way UFC started was they wanted to see what the best martial arts was, and they realized there wasn't any superior martial arts. It was just if you knew all of it together.
Yeah.
So that's how MMA started.
Yeah.
And then now full circle, where jiu-jitsu was the most dominant martial arts back then, and wrestling. Now it's kickboxing, because everyone's caught up with all that wrestling and jiu-jitsu techniques, so they can defend, they can keep the fight standing. But now people that have been taught in like elite kickboxing, where New Zealand's got a rich history of combat sport, and we know what we're doing, you know, it's not foreign to us. We know how to throw a punch, and we know
we know how to throw down.
And exactly, the science behind it, the range, we are in danger, we are not, how to roll punches, how to be safely guarded but still in the pocket. And people are starting to just recognize that now. They're overlooking what, you know, Israel and Dan are actually doing in their fights. And Brad, there's so much more going on of what they're just seeing. They're just, he's just looking for feints and stuff. But there's so much more happening, like the footwork, the setups, the body language that they're giving their opponent. There's so much more to fighting than what you're just looking at.
Those little intricacies, eh?
And you don't understand it until we're already past that now. Like, we're on to the next thing.
Yeah.
You know, like, people are looking at calf kicks now. Like, that's the game changer. Like, once you start hunting someone's leg, that can change the whole fight. One or two kicks, and you would know this.
Oh, yeah.
One or two kicks in your calf, you can't put weight on it.
Yeah.
Which means you can't put weight on your punches. And then now you're not as elusive as you were. You can't.
You don't have that same level of movement.
Nah. So that's going to stop all the momentum now. And then so people are starting to defend the calf kick, and if you check right, you can break their foot.
Oh yeah, I've seen it happen, right?
Yeah, you've seen it happen a few times. And then now everyone's doing spinning elbows and spinning back fists. Like, that's just a technique. But there's a the thing about that, when you're throwing back fists and spinning elbows, you're leaving yourself exposed because you're turning around.
Yeah.
So eventually people are going to start getting caught, and it's happened before. Like in the UFC, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, some guy span around, and he missed completely and got knocked out cold on the spot.
Oh yeah,
I think it was a guy that fought Jimmy Crute.
Right.
It was one of those fights where you know, they've seen everyone else get the highlight reel and stuff, but it can go wrong, and when it does, like, you're going to pay for it, and it just happens like that. I think in a UFC title fight, Chris Weidman threw a spinning back fist, and the guy jumped on his back, choked him out straight after. So it doesn't always work out, and that's just people seeing like trends in the sport.
That looks cool. I'll give that a go.
Yeah, exactly. But if you haven't been doing this for a long time, you're going to leave yourself exposed. And now it's like the new thing, which is Khabib, you know, locking people's arms up and trapping it, and then they can't defend now, and they just get in that like grimy wrestling style, which is like you pretty much don't have anywhere to go. It's like a checkmate position.
It is really.
You don't have a way out. It's only give up or you know, get knocked out.
Like, how many punches can you take to the face?
Exactly. So now, exactly. So that, like,
it really is a checkmate, eh?
So many more positions that people are evolving, and you just got to be one step of the curve. So now everyone's training how to defend that, and the next move, we don't know what it will be yet, but you know, so many things that will be.
There was that one dude, he threw the kick, it got caught, and then he jumped around with that spinning back kick, right? Yeah, I mean, like, that's another example of stuff.
So it's the evolution of the sport, and that's the great thing about our gym, where we know it's constantly evolving, and you got to be constantly upskilling and working on things to upgrade the hardware. You know, you can't just be a one-trick pony. You know, I've got a good right hand, but I can't just
rely on that.
Rely on my one punch. You know, like, there's so much more that you have to be training, and that's why you got to bring so many more attributes and training to the actual table. So at our gym, we have our conditioning, we have our, you know, sparring, our drilling, and then we have our we're working with a breathing coach, which has been a massive help for us. Dave Wood, we do breathing down at his workshop in Mount Albert.
Awesome.
We have you know, Dave Neath, who's a sports psychologist. We have our physio, our chiropractor. So many different attributes that you got to bring into the system and constantly be working on, because it's more than just, you know, going in there and fighting. We have a massive team behind us now, and that's just how you got to be getting better. You got to get the best that are the best in their game, and use them and help it to your advantage, and that's how you become the ultimate, which is what you see, which is in the fight. You know, everyone at their best, and that's how we get there, from using all those different programs.
So Kai, that's awesome, man. And I love how you kind of summarized all of that. I just want to take things back to you again, man, because this is all about you.
Yeah.
What's kind of next for you, bro? Like, I know that you got a baby on the way and stuff. Obviously, you're taking time off for that.
Yeah.
But like, how do you kind of like envision 2021?
2021, I see it happening as my best year yet. You know, having a baby on the way is definitely giving me perspective on what I want in life and where I want to be. And as a fighter, that's all the motivation I need. Now I have, a family to provide for and to put food on the table. And it just gives me...
You're already a motivated individual.
Exactly.
God,
so,
you got even more now.
So now it just gives me more purpose.
Yeah.
And to have more purpose as a fighter, that's everything. So for me, coming off a loss now, but like I said before, stocks don't go down. Still ranked number 7 in the world. Come from the best gym in the world. So I've been in this position before. Like I've said in my story, I've come from 3 losses and I've turned it around.
Yeah.
So coming off a loss now, I know I deserve to be in the cage with the best in the world, and it's a championship mindset. It doesn't just happen overnight. You don't just become the champ.
Yeah.
You got to be calling yourself the champ now.
Yeah.
And when I step into the cage, it's like an alter ego. I'm not just Kai. I'm stepping into my Superman version of myself, which is
don't blink.
Exactly, and bad intentions, bro. So having the fuel behind that, and
so cool.
just focused, and I know I've got what it takes to be, the champ. And I see it all in front of me. The guy that I fought back in 2019, Brandon Moreno, he's fighting for the title this weekend against the Brazilian Figueiredo. I went the distance with Moreno, and it was a close fight. I dropped him in the first round, and he ended up edging out a decision, and now he's fighting for the title. So
it's right there, man.
Exactly.
It's
so
right there.
I'm in the conversation for all these guys that are fighting for the title, and I know that's where I'm gonna be. So 2021, it's gonna be a big year for not just myself, for the gym, City Kickboxing. I'm sure all of us are gonna be on the same cards together. So I can
makes sense, eh?
Yeah, especially being in a world where you have to,
plan things out,
quarantine.
Makes it more fun for you guys, bro.
It's like a massive sike camp, When lockdown happened, we had to all move into the gym and like Muay style, living on the mats. Yeah. Training 2 to 3 times a day, but living and cooking at the gym as well. Just another element to our gym, but made us a lot more closer. Yeah. And you have that brotherhood bond that is massive when we go overseas. That really keeps us grounded and gives us a bigger purpose of why we're doing this. It's for our families, it's for our people back home, and it's for our gym as well. City Kickboxing is more than just a gym, it's a family, and so it's going to be a massive year, not just for myself but for the gym.
Awesome, bro. Last thing I want to say is like, how can people kind of like follow you? Like, what's for those people that are like more Muay Thai people that don't know too much about MMA fighters, how can they stay up to date with your journey? Kai's a very exciting fighter, by the way. If you don't know him, man, get your head out of the rock. Okay?
So if you want to follow me, on Instagram, Facebook, it's just Kai Kara France, on both handles, on Twitter as well, LinkedIn, so many.
It's all over it.
Exactly. I try to diversify what I'm doing, not just, fighting, but I have so many different things in my life that I'm trying to build up as well, and I want to give back as well as invest into the sport. So I do a lot of guest speaking as well at high schools, motivational speaking for companies.
Awesome.
Trying to spread the word, knowing about my story, and then telling people to try inspire. And I feel like it's important these days, especially the younger generation, with people not knowing how to face adversity and kind of ride the wave and come out the other end better for it. So I'm just a kind of a living proof of that, and that's why I try to be the light for people that need it, and help each other out, especially being Māori. It's a big part of me, representing my people, and especially being from Hawke's Bay. Like, a lot of people come from harsh upbringings, and not the best way to be kind of brought up, but I give them a different route, not just going down the gang life, but giving them another perspective. Like, if you have a passion, chase it, because it can all happen. You just gotta just go for it, go all in.
Persevere.
Exactly. You're going to be faced with a lot of obstacles, and if you're focused and that's what you want, like, your dreams can come true.
That's awesome, man. That's beautiful. I could talk to you for like another hour,
know,
easy, bro.
It's
too easy.
Hard out.
It's too easy. Hey, man, I really appreciate your time.
brother.
So I put all your social media stuff up so people
Easy,
can follow
bro.
you. I really appreciate it, bro. Thanks so much, man.
My man. Always
It's been
good, bro.
awesome.
Ciao, bro.
Cheers, brother. Hey guys, Steve here. If you like the content, please don't forget to press like and subscribe to stay up to date with the most recent episodes. I'll see you guys on the next one.